Hello, I am Brian Germain, and welcome to Casual Chat Live. We do a lot of really interesting characters on this show in our interviews, but this one is different, to say the least. So we are working with Pamela Aaralyn, who is clearly one of the world's best clear conduit channels. And she is going to be helping us connect to what I'm calling the Dead Skydivers Wisdom Collective. So this is skydivers that have crossed over, who have messages for us, wisdom for us. So this is obviously a little bit of a stretch for some of you, but I've been exploring this kind of stuff for a very, very long time, and I feel quite confident that that Pamela is very much the real deal. And this experience is completely authentic. But for even those that are sort of on the fence about it, give it a chance and focus in on the messages, focus in on the wisdom that's being passed on here, and just sort of hold back your inner critic from drawing any absolute conclusions. Just observe, notice what's happening here, and let in the most positive stuff, and sort of let go of whatever you're not digging. But I think that you'll really, really enjoy this one. And so just a little bit of background story. I was coaching at the wind tunnel at iFly Baltimore at the time, and I literally just got out of the tube when we had our start time. And Pamela was nice enough to start the session. So I was a little out of breath, and I had been literally in the wind stream for nearly an hour, and ran in there, and well, let's pick it up from there.
And so just now I took off my jumpsuit and ran over here. Yeah.
Well, good for you. Glad you're here.
I'm working on grounding.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because some of the things that I got from the jumpers that you asked me to channel today is just the opposite of that. I have never had experiences like this. It was really unique.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, these are some incredible people. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody on that list is like a wow person.
One of them claimed that he's your spirit guide. Well,
there you go. I wonder which one that is.
It was Robert
Mahaffey.
You want to know what he said?
Oh, I would love to hear what he said.
We should introduce you first. For those, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine you already have it rolling. We've got viewers that are here.
Yeah, but I didn't tell the crowd much about you, so my followers would love to know about you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am a professional skydiver. That's one of the channels of my experience, but I'm also a fear specialist. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and also with larger groups, keynote speaking in a variety of settings. And I mean, what makes somebody a fear expert? I mean, that's a really interesting question. And for me, I don't think anybody can truly be an expert. If you're in the physical plane, you're challenged by fear. And to me, it's been a life choice to continually put myself in situations that are challenging emotionally or physically or otherwise, to examine my experience, to notice what I'm doing to get through it, and notice how I'm undermining myself. And so it forced me to the library, honestly. It's been many, many years researching what did William James say about fear? You know, what did Buddha say about fear? You know, I'm in Thailand meditating in ashrams, asking, you know, literally the monk who built the temple, tell me about fear. So I've been doing that for a very, very long time. And so my life mission is to share what I know about it, and to help people get out of it, so that we can all expand our heart chakras, so that we can expand our dreams in the world, so that we can take on the challenges that are holding us back. And in my experience, one of the biggest ones is that we are afraid of really putting ourselves out there, being ourselves. Well, that's a piece of the puzzle of who I am, but I could go on, and I won't do that, because this is not about me.
It is because some of these skydivers, this one in particular, although he was not my first experience with channeling the beings on your list, I was only able to bring through 6 of them just due to lack of time. But the 6 that came through were very profound, and there's one that definitely connects to you. It's the Robert Mahaffey.
Well, he was my teammate in the X Games.
That makes sense because he said that you guys had won some, some pretty prolific awards and top prizes together in 1997.
That's right.
He called himself Muffy the Monkey.
You're
supposed to know what that means.
Yes, indeed. That's exactly what we used to call him. Yes, that's true.
And he's like, it's Muffy. And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, Brian will. And he's like, like that. And,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I'm like, Muffy, monkey. He's like, yes, I'm Muffy the Monkey. I'm like, what's your real name? He's like, Muffy the Monkey is all you will know.
Well, we found out his wife at the time called him Muffy as like a term of endearment. We heard that, and of course, skydivers are relentless, and so he was Muffy, but he decided that he wanted to be the monkey, so he added that. Yeah. So half of our skydiving moves were called the monkey flip or the monkey this or whatever.
Oh, well, he said that he's your spirit guide. He came through with the another one named Adrian,
who was our camera flyer in the X.
Okay. So he came through with that one specifically, and he said we're Team Z.
That's
he
right.
said although we should have gotten paid more.
We can pay nothing.
And he said he's spending a lot of time with another team that he showed me an image of a hawk and a parachute, and he put the words together like para-hawk.
Parahawks, yeah, that's interesting.
He says he's spending time with a group called the Parahawks. They're all down, But when I tried to say they're all down, he goes, no, we're all up.
Cute. Well, I mean, the questions that I have for these skydivers who crossed over are things like, what kind of wisdom do you have for us now that you have this larger perspective? What do you want to say?
Well, what he told me when I asked that question, I began to hear music, and I heard piano playing, and he said, I play the piano. I like music, and he was showing that he was still doing that, and I could hear just beautiful like stuff he was composing, not just like he heard something. It was composed. And he said many of us who have faced fears struggle with depression. So he mentioned his struggle with depression, and he said that for fear, don't let it get into apathy, that depression is okay, but my advice to you is to never become apathetic, because apathy is a much lower frequency. When you don't care, that means you don't care about your life. And let's get that way. And he wished that he had continued playing more music and things of that nature. And he gave some messages to Montgomery, Keckley, Polly, and he asked Polly to take care of 2 young kids that he calls Texie and Trey. And he said, take care of them. And he just kind of listed some family in that way. But he said, I wish that I knew more about apathy and that state of non-existence at that time. So that's what he brought.
So the lack of inspiration, right, that we shut down due to fear of trying. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fear of anything, he said. He said fear is the most self-limiting thing that you can do. And when you do that, you sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky because in our business, right? So when you throw your body at the planet and try to miss as a career, repeatedly, there is this belief built in, and I'm realizing that it's a societal-wide belief that fear is somehow a good thing, that it protects us. And I would say, well, that experience that you're talking about is not what I define as fear. To me, that's awareness, that's focus. That's seeing the details and listening to our guidance, which is something I want to talk to you about more. But fear to me is this contraction that closes the mind, closes the heart, shuts down creativity.
Yeah, it does. And then that's that stagnation. And I was reading an excerpt from something that I got in my study group. And the book is called Letter to earth, letter to earth. And I'll read it to you guys again because it really was applying to some of the things that, you know, your skydivers were saying to me. And here, I'm going to read it again for you. It was really inspirational when it came to blocks and fear-based blocks.
Yeah.
It said, hold on, let me get it again, get my screen up. Choices of self-limitation are often made when a person is overwhelmed, confused, or wants to avoid the responsibility of self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what instigates them, the denial or desensitization necessary to live within self-limiting choices puts you to sleep. You have willed yourself into temporary numbness. And in this grogginess, your will is deadened to the stimuli of inspiration and inner direction. This mind-spirit separation allows you to think about your options without being inspired to action. And when this mind-spirit union is disintegrated, the exploration of new ground is traded for the maintenance of survival. So like a bear in hibernation, your sleep will last until the threat to your survival has ended and you feel a renewed hunger for life. So in other words, something has to inspire you to get out of the sleep, but fear will keep you asleep. So this is why I really was interested in talking to you, because I knew you would have some interesting things to say about how to help people break the fight or flight response, which you guys have to do on a regular daily basis.
Well, and of course, when we refer to it, we don't just say the dichotomy of fight or flight. To me, those are activity aspects of our fear response, but there's also freeze. So to me, it's a trichotomy. To freeze in
Paralysis
is paralysis, but it's also function in terms of the when you consider an animal hiding from a predator, the ability to really hold still and not move is sometimes an adaptive behavior that keeps them alive. And we have that in us. The problem is when you're in a free fall looking at the ground and you freeze and you don't open the parachute, maladaptive, right? And that applies in so many other things where people are afraid about the career move. They're afraid to expand their life into maybe more spiritual pursuits, to share that they're really getting into things that used to be considered fringe, and now, of course, weird is the new normal, right? That's our community is brave. I mean, what you do is really, really brave, and it doesn't mean you're not scared, right? I mean, this is part of it. Is you feel the fear flaring up, and then the inspiration, as you say, is the breath. Right? Inspiration. And then we start to soften this edge. We start to soften this conclusion that I'm in trouble and I need to either run away or freeze and stare at the headlights, or, attack, which is...
You don't have time for that when you're going down at 100 miles per hour, right?
Well, we don't have time for that in most things in life. It's happening in the flow of a conversation where egos are getting flared up and I want to defend myself, and it's, my fear of losing something, and suddenly I turn on the attack and I lose the human connection, this ebb and flow of love.
Yeah.
And so I think that the fear is one of these things we put different labels on it. That anger is one of the labels of fear in my book, and so is escape. So is shutting down and tuning out and running away and getting drunk to tune out the stress. When in fact, we'd do better to stare the stress straight in the eyes and smile and breathe big and consider the possibility that everything's going to be all right.
Absolutely. Breathe towards your fear. Yeah.
Everything is all right.
Absolutely. That's interesting that you mention human connection in the face of conflict and how people will jump to defend themselves. When you are defending yourself normally, that's fight or flight too, or paralysis, depending upon how you react to it, versus if you respond to it. If you take a moment, if you breathe, then you are responding as opposed to reacting.
Yes.
But yeah, it's that lack of human connection when you just kind of defensively go, well, blah, 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 blah. And you just kind of go for the other person as opposed to just listening. When you just sit there and breathe and listen, there's a technique that I use called circling when I'm communicating with people and I feel threatened. So basically when someone has offended me, I listen and I just kind of go, and I quiet myself, I calm my ego and I breathe and I listen to what they're saying, and then I repeat back what they're saying. So I'll say, well, let me just get this straight, just to make sure that I'm clear. You're saying that you believe that I blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Is this your perception on it? And now normally this makes people do a double take, because if they are reacting,
Mm-hmm.
if they are in position to be defensive or offensive, then generally speaking, they'll go, well, yeah, I said that, but wait a minute, I don't really mean it like that. And generally speaking, that makes people kind of stop and listen to each other a little bit more.
It's beautiful. Instead of holding up a sword, you hold up a mirror.
Yeah.
Knowing that, in fact, on a deeper level, I am you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a much higher perspective. And when the ego is defending itself, its illusory self, the onion that you peel and realize there's nothing in there anyway, it's just perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're all one, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well, speaking of fear, one of the skydivers that you had me pull in to channel, I cannot pronounce his name because it is French.
Oh, Patrick de Gardon.
Yeah, I thought he was saying Patrick.
Good. Yes.
But I'm like, Patrick?
Welcome, Patrick. Yes.
Right. So he's been here quite a bit. He was the one that I first experienced.
Good.
So what happened with him, when I brought him in, I said, what message do you have? And he said, my message to the people listening is to push all boundaries, but not your own.
Interesting.
That was very, very interesting. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said he developed a new technique. And I said, oh, show me this technique. And I was so excited. And he said, are you sure? And he kind of smiled very quietly. And he had this coy little smile just on one side of his mouth. Very humble guy, by the way, really sweet. And he said, are you sure? In a French accent. And I said, yes, absolutely. Bring it at me, because that's kind of how I am. Suddenly I was him. And I had jumped off of something, God knows what. It was pretty high. It wasn't a plane or anything. It felt like something, like a mountain, like a something that I shouldn't be jumping off of. And and I was a little bit afraid. And I felt like a bat. There was something that was in my body. And he called it my wingsuit. And I don't understand any of these terms. He said, this is your wingsuit, and this is how you have to let the wind take you. And I said, take me where? And he said, wherever it wants to take you. And I was flying flat like a bat, but I was zooming. There was a little parallel, but very much downward, and very, very, very fast. Yeah. And I said, why are we not slowing down? And he said, I do everything with speed. Everything with speed. And he said, now this is sky surfing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then suddenly I was on like this board. I don't know. And then he said, and you can do this too. And other skydivers do this. And I was on a board of some kind. And he said, who says that different types of sports can't be combined? You need to think outside of boxes. You know, so that was very, very interesting that he had me in a wingsuit and I felt like a bat. And I was all the way down. I was explaining to your listeners prior to when you got here that I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And he's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, I'm going to die. And he's like, no, you're not.
Why?
Yeah. And he said he was a bird in many lifetimes. And he said, I know you guys believe I was mad and I didn't really make any attempts to prove my sanity, but I wasn't believing in insanity or sanity. It just is. So he was kind of a very calm being to be doing all these things.
Yes, he was a very calming being and very larger than life when you met him. He was I mean, most people consider him to be one of the greatest skydivers that has ever lived. He really invented the modern wingsuit. He invented sky surfing. He jumped with skis. He jumped onto the North Pole, sky surfing, you name it. And his methodical nature was one of the things that those who knew him really respected. And it's really interesting that he's Patrick, you're talking about this idea of noticing limitations and expanding beyond them, but knowing your own limitations and being more cautious. I assume that's, Patrick, what you meant by this?
And he said also the nature of boundaries. Are they incoming or are they outgoing? Your outgoing ones stay put. You don't even break your outgoing boundaries. You know your rules. So that's for a reason too.
Yeah.
But in terms of other boundaries that are incoming, you can push those.
Yeah.
If other people put boundaries on you, you can push those.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, when they were testing the first wingsuits, Adrian, who was also his teammate, we shared a cameraman, Adrian Nicholas, send me a suit. He said, "Oh, see if this thing is, if we can improve it." And I didn't think that they were crazy. I thought this was a new expansion of what's possible.
Well, he didn't say you. He said other people, like the whole society of jumpers kind of thought, what are you doing? You're mad.
Absolutely.
So it was really cool. Now, he did come in with Adrian. They came in together, so that was really interesting. And he stated to me that, Adrian did not feel any guilt over the way that Patrick passed. So why should, everyone else understands that there are risks involved. Yeah. So he was showing me that something about his last jump involved Adrian. So that was something that he wanted, the jumpers to know, that's everyone understands that, whatever. I don't know what they're talking about, but they were both wanting that people to know that they were together, and that that there's no, that mistakes happen,
Yeah, well, I mean, around that topic, because of course the two of them started this proximity flying movement of people jumping off of mountains with wingsuits and flying close to the ground. And now we're seeing a lot of people crossing over, 30, 40 a year, sometimes worse. Worse, I guess that's a spin on it, isn't it? But what would they say to the folks that are here with wingsuits that are pushing these boundaries from your perspective?
This is what Adrian says about that. He is actually a walk-in. Do you understand that spiritual term, right?
I do. New to the pain, right?
He had a near-death experience during one of his jumps. And he was explaining it to me last night in the astral field. And he said, I thought I'd die during that. And it was cold. And he let me feel what was happening for a moment. And I felt cold all around my face. And it felt like something was here over my mouth. Mm-hmm. And it felt like I could not exhale, like I was suffocating. And I said, breathe out. What's wrong with you? And he goes, if we breathe out, we die. and then he started maneuvering whatever mask or whatever was on his face. And he kind of just started pushing it just a little bit. And he said, now I have to breathe really slowly and I have to measure my breath. So I was him and I was like, very, very slowly like that. Mm. Just a little bit. And he goes, you have to do that for 4 whole minutes or you're going to die. And I'm like, ah! And he's like, no, none of that.
Freaking out doesn't help. Yeah.
Because no one's here. And we have 4 more minutes going at 100 miles per hour, and we got at least 10 miles of this. So you got to make do. Yeah. And I'm like, aren't you afraid you're going to die? He's like, when are we going to get this? And he was getting a little impatient with me.
Not too much.
And this was his near-death experience. And he said he blacked out.
Oh, he did. Well, this is when he was doing the distance, the wingsuit distance world record where he needed oxygen and had to jump from high altitude to go further than anybody else had.
That would happen. What's this that he almost died thing? Because he told me he like blacked out from lack of oxygen and feeling cold. That he knew that if he exhaled at the wrong time frame that it could be devastating. So he basically, because of trying to meter his breath like that, there at the tail end, mm-hmm. right before the end of that time, like 3.5 minutes ago, he blacked out and had a near-death experience.
Interesting.
So the point is, he said, regarding my death, I would advise you to always be prepared for what you think might save your life might do the opposite.
Which is exactly what happened with Adrian. Yes. And
he said, many jumpers learn from my death and this law of what he's calling paradoxical results mm-hmm. can be disastrous, but irony has always been my way.
That's true.
He said, you can always push your boundaries, but be prepared for these paradoxical results. Stay humble, trust your instincts. What won't kill you will likely make you stronger, but what you believe would never kill you may just be simple enough to do the job.
Right.
So unexpected results, that kind of thing. Don't get too cocky, in other words.
Yeah. Well, for those that didn't know the nature of Adrian's death, he was essentially killed by the automatic activation device, the automatic parachute opening device, that is for people that are blacked out or something like that, lose altitude awareness. It opens your parachute, but he was already under parachute. And he was doing his characteristic spiral approach from high altitude, and he went fast enough to cause this device to open his parachute, and the two parachutes tangled. Do I have that right, Adrian? I wasn't there in Holland, but
yeah, you had it right. It just all happened so quickly. And he said, and that was, speed was his thing. You know, he talked fast. He drove fast.
Yes, he did. Scared me.
Yeah, he said people didn't want to be in the car with him. It was easier to be, you know, like a wingman than it would be to be in the car with him.
Right.
So
yeah. Great. Well, I mean, I consider both. I mean, Adrian, Patrick, even Robert as well. I mean, Robert was a wild man, but all these guys had great wisdom.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's why I want to sort of tune in and step across what most people consider to be a barrier, and I don't. What else do you want to pass on to the skydivers? We have an open mic, right? Any of you?
And there are a couple other people that wanted to come through, both today when I tried to bring them all in, and in the astral realm. So we have more of an artist than a diver, although there was a lot of, you know, skydiving and jumping. At some point in time, this one probably retired into painting rigs, because I saw a bunch of, and he's funny. And I said, oh, well, show me some of them. And he said, well, they're mostly on t-shirts these days. There's not a lot left. And I said, well, what kind of t-shirts? And he said, the kind of t-shirts that would scare young children in grocery stores. And I'm like,
Dave Rickerby. Yeah.
Okay. And he is very funny, and he says somebody out there that's listening still has his favorite word, boys and jets. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something that somebody who's listening has. And I said, well, how do you feel about, you know, you're gone now, and what's that like? And he made a joke, and he said, well, there was that one time I broke my leg, and I don't feel that, so I think I'm good. At least my leg is better. Like, what? Wait, what? I have to spread that message? He said, well, they will understand my humor and know it's me if you spread that message. Yeah. He actually died of natural causes, according to him.
Yep.
He said, you know, and go figure, you know, that's something he didn't expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So death is not something to be afraid of either way, is his message. When you
Good.
go,
that's a big one. That's a big one.
You go.
So many people are afraid of death, and they think they need to be afraid of death to be safe. And the skydivers or drivers of cars, there's this assumption that if I'm not afraid enough, you know, fear of God, all these things, to me, it's the lowest form of motivation, that we can do better than that to pull us forward into the focus that creates safety in all its forms. We can do better than fear. It's the worst thing you can put in your gas tank. It's combustible, but, you know, it's like moonshine. You know, you can put moonshine in your gas tank, but your car's not going to run well. You know. Yeah. So who else do we have here that is wanting to be heard and pass on?
Well, there was a female that came through. Her name is Deanna.
Beautiful. I am so glad, because we had her husband on the last show, Norman.
And she said, I still love my Norman. That's the first thing she said that she wanted, you know, you guys to address. And she said, she is still a freak flyer.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
It's when you fly inverted, and it was really it's a term that continues. It basically means that you're not normal and you're glad, you know, that you want to do things differently and creatively. We had even a Freak Brother convention.
Well, she allowed me to step into her body momentarily to express and to sort of show you guys and to sort of share my experience of what it was like to be her. And she is just beautiful. It was so beautiful because I particularly have the struggle with what a lot of females struggle with how can you say this? Not really being appreciative of your body, of your feminine grace. And, and I'm the person who will say, oh, I don't dance. I don't do that. I might look weird doing that. Like, that's me, and I'm always aware of my body and aware of my movements and almost hyper aware. But when I was her, I wasn't. It felt like when I jumped, I did the whole paralysis thing, and she goes, no, that's not what we do. Do this. And she jumped into my body, and she just started. It was like a dance. It was like I was one with the air, and that the sky was my dance stage. Yeah. And she goes, now the sky is water, and then she was making movements that looked like she was swimming. It was like this. And then her feet were going like you can't see my feet, but it was like this. My hands are, and then I'm like, wow, how are you not afraid? And she was like, oh, you have plenty of time. And she was just so calm. I'm like, but we're dying, going down. And she's like, dance. I'm like, huh. And she's like, when you dance through fear, that's my message for you, is to allow your creativity to be expressed, because when you're afraid, creativity is your passion that will pull you out of fear. So she said the message to her crowd is to never conform. Don't be afraid to dance differently. Dance unbounded, and don't give up. She said that's the biggest thing. It's all trial and error, and the error is there's no fault. It's all beauty. All beauty is still a dance.
Wow, thank you, Deanna. That's perfect. Yeah, she continues to be one of the most inspiring people to watch.
It was like lyrical dance in air. I really don't know how to express it other than that. It felt like I was a dancer.
Well, don't worry. I'm going to send you some video so you can see what we actually, over the years, what people shot of her. Absolutely phenomenal flyer. And she looked at the whole thing differently. She was the first one to say, let's combine dance and free fall. Why do we have to just lay on our bellies like a bunch of lizards and crawl around on our bellies when we can fly, truly fly? And she changed a lot of people's perceptions.
Yeah.
Wow, nice work, Deanna. So, are anybody else around that wants to show up for us?
Yeah, one more. His name is Carl. I'm not even going to go for that last name. I don't think it's English.
Spanish.
Thank you. When he came to me, he put a camera or maybe a video, something in front of my eyes. And I was looking at skydiving, but I was skydiving. And I'm like, he said, I'm a cinematographer. But right now, I don't want you to pay attention to this camera. This camera is your body. I said, what? I'm wait a minute, you don't understand. I'm dying right now. Because I don't like jumping from anything, right? And he's like, oh, right now, you're not paying attention to that. You're paying attention to the beauty of what's happening in front of you, and this camera is your eye.
Yeah.
So pretend it's not here, and just show me the beauty of what you see.
Yeah. Everything
else doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, I'm seeing passion. And he's like, that's my trademark. Now we have something in common that I can talk to you about that can work you through your fear. He said, when you have passion, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. When you have passion, you will be propelled forward. So then any other problem that could come up, the passion is going to drive you through it. His message is this. He says, remember, you want to feel like you are in a completely different realm, because you are. The sky, being in the sky, is a completely different dimension. It's a different dimensional existence, and you don't want to think about it in any other way. It's ethereal, and it's bliss, and it's like walking on the moon, and you are the astronaut. So he was pretty prolific in the way that he spoke with me, and he would be patient for a time, as long as I was listening. And then if I wasn't listening, he kind of got a little stern and he'd say, "You're not listening." And he talked with his hands a lot. "You're not listening." And there was kind of an interesting accent there. But he said, "This is not about thinking. This is about feeling your passion and showing me what you're seeing and showing the rest of the world what you're feeling. So the vision and your feeling have to be congruent at all times."
Yeah, he was definitely one of the most inspired, passionate skydivers, and he was so passionate about getting the shot. And there's a lot of people like that, but he was really, I mean, he stepped forward as an aerial artist and said, "I'm going to try my best to really capture this moment and share it for the people that don't actually want to jump, but want that feeling of freedom." And Carl, you did it. You achieved your goal, and you continued to give. So thank you.
Yeah. He's happy that his wife overslept.
Oh, on the day of his death. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said that, and he did not. She did not. Understanding the same risks that he understood. She got that all those things happen for certain reasons. But he did not want to take her with him because they had just gotten off of a jump. According to him, they had been jumping.
Yep.
So then she could have gone with him that day, but she didn't because of that. So he says there's no accidents to anything. She was meant to jump longer, and it's really that simple.
Interesting. See, that's a really big question that skydivers run into. I think everybody runs into is it something that's set in stone that this is your date and sorry, you're leaving, right? But this is a question that we continue to run into, isn't it? And of course, we have freedom of choice. We have free will.
He said it could change at any point in time. If you think, in a moment that you could die, and then it could change in that thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my objectives is to be an old skydiver, right? And we're talking to folks that, maybe they jump for 20, 30, or even 40 years, but from your perspective now, all of you folks, do you see the value of that also? In other words, continuing this enlightened, inspired, dangerous path, but also finding a way to maybe back it down off of a 10, like these go to 11, to back down the velocity, back down the risk taking just enough that you can, live a longer life. What are people chiming in about that?
Carl didn't have that philosophy.
Yeah.
Putting it mildly there.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hell no."
Okay, it's why I'm asking. I'm asking that. Yeah.
He said, "No, that's not the way I would live at all." Deanna, on the other hand, didn't put a thought to it one way or the other. And she urges people to, especially, she had the love of her life. She said, I was like the wing woman. She said, I was the woman behind the man. And then he would put me above him at all times. And then he would say that he's a support to me. So she said, for those of you who really are in relationships and you really want to lengthen that, understand that really only another jumper understands. So consider that. And then if they don't have that to understand, they at least have to have the need for pushing a limit, the need for pushing the fear, to understanding of that nature, for people in relationships. And then to take it deeper, it's not really a matter of lowering your risk or upping your risk. You just follow your passion in a way that is a balance. I always had balance to what I did. Therefore, it's never a consideration. Yep. If you have balance, you're never pushing too much or too little.
Yep.
You know how much you can push, and you know when to stop.
There you go. Yeah, to create a. Whoops, we have a visitor. Sorry. People coming and going a little bit. So I think that's a really important perspective, is to recognize that life comes, life goes, right? People, they enter, they leave, they enter, they leave, but are you really living? You know, are you really expanding yourself, your own soul journey, or are you just coexisting? Are you just staying alive, right? Are you expanding the human?
Too little risk, then you are just existing. Too much risk is a different story.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's bad. It's just a different story. And then you're pushing the threshold of your purpose at that point. Yeah. It's not good or bad. But too little risk, I don't like that at all. And none of us do. She speaks for the collective there.
It's interesting because, I mean, one might assume that you bring in all these people, this collective of inspired souls, that they'd say, be careful and make sure you don't die like me or something like that. And what I'm getting is quite the opposite.
Yeah. Well, Robert is speaking up a little. He says that consider the Parahawks. He says they're a team of jumpers that went down in an unusual way all together, and they weren't jumping. They were just on a plane trip.
Yeah.
You know, they probably could have been jumping, but the plane went down. So what he's saying about that team, and who he really is with right now very strongly and has been for a good while, he said, consider that. You know, there's no, you're just on your way doing what you normally do. Anything could happen at any point in time. And he said, at some point, I got so caught up in my emotional fear that I did not push my physical fear anymore. So don't let the emotional fear cause you to be stagnant.
Interesting distinction. Right? I mean, there's this.
So the emotional fear, anxieties, depression, mental illness, things of that can be just as devastating as a physical fear, if not more so. Because then you go back to that stasis, that stagnation that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. It's true.
So there's a balance, according to Deanna.
Very interesting. So, well, what else do they want to teach us?
There was a point in time in Adrian's near-death experience event. And this was probably a world-breaking record, this event. According to him, it was a big deal. That cold that I felt, and when he allowed me to step through his body for that moment, after about 3.5 minutes or so, I couldn't breathe because I was measuring my breath, and I blacked out as him. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? And he said, oh, this is surrender. This is the lesson of surrender. This is why I had this experience, because then I had to see that my passion was deeper and more significant to me than my fear of dying. What's more important? Surrender. Surrender to that. Surrender, because your passion is more important at a deeper degree. And when you're in that experience, your passion can actually save you and become a more balanced act. He had to meter his breath very slowly upon the exhale, and he couldn't exhale for a period of time. And then when he finally did, he was like breathing just very short baby breaths outward, just a little bit at a time. And then because he couldn't just fully just let it all out, it's like asthma, you will literally begin to suffocate. So he blacked out, and he said, I had to surrender. That had to happen. And the moment I blacked out, that was when my higher self merged with my human self and asked me, do I want to live? And I said, oh, I've surrendered either way. And I landed. And then I awakened just enough time to breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply and have the space of air to do that without being in danger. And then I landed.
Wow. Well, it brings to mind an interesting experience of mine that maybe we can reflect on, is that when I'm in a really dangerous moment and I'm afraid, really feeling afraid, I feel something in the middle of my body. And the way that I visualize this, and I think actually it's quite literal, it's like the two parts of me are going in different directions, and the cord between them, it's attached here, and it's tugging on me. And my higher self is going, I'm out of here. This is dumb. And my ego is saying, let's do it. And I feel it pulling on the middle of me. And if I'm smart, I'll listen to it and say, oh, higher self's over there. Maybe I should hang out with him and not listen to the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, your reflection on that?
Carl, is it?
Mm-hmm. Carl Banish.
Yeah. This is the one we have on that answer, and he says, that was my downfall. That right there. I did not have to jump off. I did not have to jump. That was I had been told by many experienced jumpers that was not, I shouldn't be jumping from that. There was no, I knew that in advance.
True love, yeah.
So there's a point in time when you say, okay, how much are you willing to do that? What's really, is that really worth it? My ego took over in that moment. My higher self tugged me in the same way yours did, and I should have listened.
Yeah. Well, it's a lesson. And since we keep going forward infinitely, we profit from it. But I think these moments where we go, la, 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 I can't hear my guidance because I don't want to look like a wimp. I think that's something that shows up, and it's not, I don't think it shows up for everybody all the time, but
it showed up for Adrian. Adrian is stating right now that when he was in that 4-minute descent and had that faulty gear there, that basically what he was thinking about, his ego was going, you're going to look so stupid. If you die, you're going to look so stupid. He said, I can't lie to you. That ego took over and that I had to step out of that because that wasn't what was important at that time. Surviving was what was important.
Interesting. So I think, that's, I mean, we vilify the idea of ego, the separate sense of self, right? That's separate from the world, separate from source. And from my perspective, it's kind of an illusory disconnect anyway, that it's not really disconnected. But I notice myself vilifying it because I see the traps that it set for us. And yet it can give us this passionate pulling power that only in an individual perspective can summon, of like, I will survive, I will fight through this. Maybe it's not all bad.
Yeah, Adrian says it wasn't a fight, it was a surrender. I relaxed into it, and I thought, well, whatever's going to happen, if I land this shot dead, I land this shot dead, but I'm going to land this. It's going to happen. I'm going to land this jump.
Yep. Yeah, and you did.
Yeah.
And lots of others.
Yeah.
You're a great man. You've called in, all these people that are here are people that I respect so hugely, which is great because that's what I've always done with my show, Casual Chat, is go, all right, who do I love and respect and want to share with the world? And so, these folks are, invisible for most, but nevertheless, major wisdom inspired people. So who else from our crowd would like to be heard that has messages, specific or general, to the greater world?
Yeah, I'm not getting that much more than those. Those are the only 6 that I seem to be bringing forward. So overall, collectively,
Yeah, I was going to say, whoever we just called in is a higher order of magnitude, huh?
Somebody disagrees.
Yeah, who is that? It's funny for those that aren't used to this kind of thing that we do have interference. Actual microphones fritzing and internet connection fritzing. This is the way it works. Energy is energy, isn't it?
There's someone here, and I'm not getting a name on this one because this was a new one to me, who did not like safety nets in life. He did not like parachutes.
Interesting.
In a way that he didn't want to pull them or deploy them at all. He said, if you put a big giant net on the ground and catch me, that would be interesting.
Which I'm sure they all got to see Luke Akins do that earlier this year, right?
Yeah. So that was, they're talking about that now.
They are. Yeah. So what do they think about all that? Did they
They're
think
showing me that. They're showing me it. Wait a minute. Okay. They're going to pull me through this body. Agree. No.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, that's a rather long fall. They're just letting me watch it from above. They honored my request not to be pulled in. So he's falling and he's on his belly and he's falling and he's falling and he's falling. There is a net. It's a big one. Oh God, it's so big. Big. Little pad in the middle. There's plenty of people watching and scared and he's falling. But then right there, it's right here. It's like right before, maybe not even just a few seconds before he lands, they told me that and they're showing me that he flipped. Like he did this maneuver and he is now on his back and I'm feeling my back hurts. He said his back was hurting for a little while after that due to the quick spin that he practiced that spin in the air. And they applaud his ability to practice prior to doing something really, really risky, that you practice while you're in the air in a way that you get really comfortable with your maneuvers. So despite the fact that his back hurt for a little while after that, he still got that maneuver down with practice. It wasn't just something where his ego took over. It was balanced practice, Deanna calls. That's the balance.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, dang, that's a big net. And that's a big fall into the net too. And then they're showing me it again. And then after he falls into it, he just kind of sits there for a bit and people were looking for like 5 seconds. There's this pause where people are like, did he make it? And like, I'm feeling that.
He didn't move at all. He was just hanging.
He's just like sitting there and they're like, and then he gets up and then they're showing me his wife coming to hug him. And that he hugged his wife first and people were, clapping in that celebration. And he has a life purpose of celebration. That's why he has no fear. So they're wanting to bring in that skydivers honor the purpose of celebration.
Yes.
So let's talk about that particular life purpose that most of you, particularly base jumpers, honor. So celebration is like an umbrella. And then underneath it, you have your spokes that you hang on to. You have agape, that's unconditional love, bliss and joy, unity, consciousness, all of that. Celebration is the celebration of every possible gambit of human emotion. It's the highest frequency that you can hold on the planet. So that's why I was attracted to being interviewed by a skydiver, because I talk about celebration. So I'm happy that some of your team is bringing that up.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
You guys feel that. Like my question to you is, how do you feel about celebration and bliss? And is it like that when you jump?
Well, what we want to know is what is it like for the world to not live in that feeling most of the time? Because why would you not? It's interesting. Yeah, it's true that's the people. It's like imagine a flame in the darkness. And the moths that get attracted to that flame, automatically you love them. And it's not just the skydiving that draws people in. After a while, you start to realize the truth of the old statement that we come for the skydiving, we stay for the skydivers. Because we create this community of love, and it's beyond just love. It is celebration. It is glad to be alive. It's not hard to get a skydiver to express thankfulness, because we're on the edge of that already. Or every moment you're up there flying around, oh gosh, I'm so lucky, lucky to be here in this moment. Somebody pinch me, and it can be a metaphor, right? The skydiving experience, or mountain climbing or kayaking, I'm all about all adventure. It can be the tiniest little adventure where you're challenging yourself to show up. Where if you don't pay attention, if you're not careful, something bad could happen. And yet if you do, right, and you lean into the experience and let it be fun, let it be joyful, and trust yourself. Trust your guidance that's coming from within, guidance from without, and you keep looking forward. What's next? What's next? That is, do you have any question when you're at a great party, if 10 minutes from now is going to be great? It is. And so to live that way is a beautiful way to be, but it does require a lot of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the skydivers are a really beautiful bunch, and I love them dearly.
So who's the oldest person that you've jumped with?
The oldest person that I've jumped with, golly, I mean, I've jumped with a number of people in their 90s. Rocky Rocky Radabaugh, who crossed over just earlier this year, was 90 or so, died of natural causes.
Uh-huh.
Love that.
That's wonderful. I love that too.
Yep.
And but who was the oldest person at the time, like in their age when they jumped, they were old, as opposed to?
I mean, we get lots of folks that do, you know, a single jump at the age of 100 years old or something. But we have quite a few of them that started when they were 18, you know, back in the 1940s or something, and they just keep doing it right up until they physically can't do it anymore. You know.
And at what age is that one?
Well, I know quite a few of them that are in their 90s, you know, 80s and 90s, and they're still jumping.
Wow.
It's a low impact sport when you're good at it.
When you're good at it, okay.
And if you're not good at it, it hurts a little bit. But we say only for a moment, you know.
Yeah.
The truth is that, yeah.
That's a really powerful operative phrase that I'd like to really put in quotations there, Corral, just for those of you, this disclaimer, when you're good at it.
Yeah, when you're good
Train
at
with
it.
a professional.
It's not that complicated to do it, but skydiving is beautiful. It's brought me most of the most beautiful things in my life. I mean, my wife, my family, everything, you know, the crowd of people that come together for educational purposes. That's, you know, a big part of my job. But it's the spirit of adventure, of a joyful expression of what if, you know, instead of, oh, what if it goes wrong, and then visualize what might go wrong, and then you go the other way, you know, you take the big wide berth around the danger. What if it goes well is the question that spurs this passionate adventurer in all of us. And then you look at the details and you plan it out like a stunt, and then you do it. And it might just be standing on one foot, you know, and then closing your eyes and trying to touch your nose. You know, that's an adventure if you really put yourself into it. And metaphorically, you're going to get all these lessons from climbing into a cave and turning off your headlamp. You know, nothing changes about the cave when you turn your light off, and it changes the way you feel about it. It's an adventure, and you're going to learn stuff about your breathing. You're going to learn stuff about the thoughts that occur to you and how much power you have to let them go.
Yeah.
Right? The negative visualizations.
Mm-hmm.
And you start wondering, gosh, you know, if I meditated more, how skillful could I get at letting go of thought? To free myself from this construct of assumption about the world, the beliefs that I keep repeating in my mind, that I keep assuming are the solid ground of, quote, reality. What if I could expand that reality with a more creative vision?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what adventure is, and it's the reason why humans are here. All of us, you know, not just humans.
Yeah, I can imagine that, you know, it would be really, really difficult, you know, for people who have a fear of heights in general, you know, to go through that experience. And I can imagine myself doing it, that I would be the one that's on the edge of the plane, kind of sitting there going, no, oh no, you know, like it's one of those things where you just kind of, but I'm sure that the training is so simple and specific and so full of clarity that it's like, is that what it is? It's like, pull this.
Incremental.
Yeah.
By piece, one step at a time. This is how you tie your shoes, you know, this is how you button your shirt. And it's piece by piece so that our brains can get comfortable with this chunk, comfortable with that chunk, and eventually put the whole thing together and go, this isn't actually that crazy. I love that when my students have that epiphany, when they put enough of it together and go, wait a minute, this isn't nuts at all. And I say, exactly. That's why I've been doing this for, it's my 32nd year of jumping out of airplanes, you know, just turned 50 yesterday. And, you know, if this was crazy, I wouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got beautiful children that I would like to, you know, be around for when they get older.
So there are practical rules and steps and preparations and, you know, so for anyone, I think more of what I'm trying to ask is, say if me or anyone who would go to train for skydiving, that basically oops, what happened? We must have lost him. Well, hopefully he'll come back in. If not, we have about 10 more minutes before we have to go. So I'll look at some of your questions. What I was going to say, though, is that hopefully there are incremental steps and that it's okay. Do this, and here's your fail-safe if that doesn't work, and do this, and here's your fail-safe. And I'm sure that that it's probably much more clear and simple than anything we could possibly imagine. It has to be. Someone asked in the question and answers section, you know, what about being addicted to the adrenaline rush that causes you to take bigger risk? Adrenaline rush comes in any sport, and it comes based upon personality type, and it can be the best thing ever if you turn that frequency into passion. So it's about the management of the frequency and keeping the balance within it. Because if you look at, say, the Hawkins scale of consciousness, just let's apply that to the spiritual world for a moment. You have apathy down here at the bottom, and you have celebration down here at the top, up here at the top. That's actually not Hawkins scale, that's mine. I think I'm the only one that put celebration up there right now. Everyone else has love and other stuff, which is great. So you're working somewhere here and you're building up. See, jumpers don't have the buildup, and people who are addicted to the adrenaline rush don't have a buildup. They don't have a fail-safe. So basically speaking, it's just from somewhere here at the bottom or middle to the top. So manage that and pull it down just a little bit, like bring it into gratitude, love, any other, just barely lower scale. And then it's not something that's so, such a rush coming back through. You know what I mean? Oh, you're back.
Amazing. Apparently where my laptop was plugged in was not a hot outlet. Looked like an outlet. See, there you go. Paradoxical things. The thing that you thought was going to save you, Adrian, right? See, he can be taught. All right. So, yeah, but you were asking a great question, which is somebody coming into this, and it's the spiritual community, I think, on some level gets this, that if you have nothing but fearlessness, you have a problem. If you have nothing but fear, you have a problem. So then what? You get down to the details. That's all. Somebody says, hey, I'm interested in astral travel. Great. Well, have you meditated much? You know, start with square one before you get in over your head. You don't just put on a base jumping parachute and jump off a cliff in Norway.
I completely agree, and that's something that I teach as well, because that is what people say primarily when they come to me, and they're looking for life purpose and what are my gifts and why can't I astral travel and why can't I see dead people.
Yep.
Life purpose is a better place to start. Yeah. You know, but the whole jumping straight into opening the Pandora's box here is something a little bit akin to what I was, there was a question that I was answering here in the question and answer section in our chat about, it was from John Lynch, and he asked, you know, what happens when, you know, someone is addicted to the adrenaline rush and then they take bigger and bigger risk. So I compared that a little bit to, say, something like a scale of consciousness, where there's apathy here at the bottom, which we were discussing that earlier before you got here, and then celebration, which we've discussed a lot, here at the top of that scale of consciousness. You don't go from the bottom or the middle up to this. So if you find yourself going too quickly up to this in your frequency, lower it down to something like gratitude or agape or something, you know, lower it down, just scale it down a notch in your frequency of your emotion. Practice the emotion when you're jumping, scaling down from celebration and all of that bliss and all that stuff into a little bit more peaceful breathing. What's unity? And you can do that with a mantra just by saying, show me peace, show me unity, show me other things. Those are things that I say to myself when I feel like I'm just a little bit too much up here.
Yeah, I agree with that very much. That when somebody's under a parachute, right, and a lot of people have nervousness under the parachute. You're looking down at where am I going to land? I mean, there's some, you know, there's some good places to land and a lot of not so good places to land, right? Trees and water and all that. And I remind them that their ability to see clearly what's really in front of them, right? Not just their preconceived notion about what they feared would be there, but what's actually there requires a sobering process. And that means that you need to hold your eyes still and expand your full breath, open your rib cage and let it out slowly, and move yourself to a place of first peace and silence and gratitude, thankfulness, looking around at the beauty and letting that cause the goosebumps in your body to raise up. Wow, this is beautiful, because you can't be there and in fear at the same time. That's a big one, isn't it? And to say, and maybe this would make sense for you as well, but I say, if you're really worried in the airplane before you jump out, look out into the other eyes in this airplane and reach out with your love and try to help. Try to help cheer up that person who's more afraid than you are. You know, to try to be in this place of compassion activates, you know, from a physical perspective, the prefrontal cortex, right, where love and compassion come from. And behind that, you know, the pineal gland, right, to wake up the higher self requires us to let go of the fear mind, you know, the reptilian brain that goes, oh, I have to fight for life, or, you know.
Actors do it.
Yeah.
On stage, you know, when they're facing, you know, stage fright and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I used to visit as a part of some of my training mental hospitals. I got experience, you know, and ability to do this, and signed on well in advance, and had to basically beg to be a volunteer there. You know, background checks, and then from that point on, if I'm a volunteer, then I get to see a lot of the inner workings of what goes on with what humans call insanity. So I'm going to share a brief little story with you about this. There was a lady who was in extreme fear, extreme panic. She had been committed involuntarily, like completely against her will. She's like, I don't know why I'm here, and oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. And she was just such severe panic that it was really making her illness come off like 1,000 times worse than what it actually was.
Yeah.
So basically, I didn't really know what to say to her to make her feel better, but here we were in the same restroom together, and she was in a stall next to me, screaming and crying and pounding on the stall. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to come in, you know, and help you out. She's like, no, you're not coming in. No, you know, no way. How do I know you're not one of them? You're a volunteer here. You know, what if you have a big needle, you know?
Right.
I'm like, okay, we've got to get you out of the fear.
Yep.
She's like, well, right now I'm afraid of you. And she's screaming at me and pounding on the door. And I'm like, okay, am I going to really, what are we going to do to get through this fear? And I had the notion to tell her to act, to pretend that everything was okay. I said, don't do it for me, but do it because if you believe that you're afraid, go with the fear for a moment. Say you believe something's bad's going to happen. Okay. What are you going to do about it? Say someone's coming with a needle. That's what you fear right now, and they're going to put you out. Okay, that's what you fear. If you're afraid of it, that probably will happen, especially if you keep banging on the door like this and acting like you are crazy. So let's talk about that for a moment. We gotta work on this fast.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Just pretend for a moment that you are completely fine. You want to be fine, so show them that you're fine. I want you to put on your fine face right now. You're on a stage. You're on a play. You're an actor, because this is what you got to do. If you are involuntarily here against your will, you got to act your way out of it. So for this moment, I want you to pretend that you are fine. She's like, that simple? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. Breathe with me and pretend you are fine. Because I really did see someone that I think is coming, and so you better pretend that you're fine now. So there was no choice. She started breathing. I'm like, you don't want that shot, right? Right? So pretend now. So that whole fake it till you make it thing when it comes to fear really worked with her in that moment, and she calmed down. Someone did come, and I'm like, I got it. It's okay. She's fine. She's like, oh my God, thank you.
That's huge. You really hit a big one that I use all the time.
Does that happen when you're on your way down and it's like your first jump and you're kind of like almost at the bottom and you're thinking you're gonna run into a tree or something? Is that a valid thing that you could say, I can fake it my way through this landing? That can be
how you feel. It changes how you feel, and the body changes the brain. You know, that if you act calm and you breathe calm and you stand confidently, I have them do the victory pose with the fingers open, or the Wonder Woman, you know, that one, and just assume that body posture as if you're being filmed. As, all right, I want you to first, let's be the scared person. And I have them act it out. So what would you do? What would your eyes look like? What would your breathing be like? where you hold your breath once in a while, then you go back to the high, low frequency, high amplitude, or was it the other way around, right? And so now I want you to be the hero. I want you to be the compassionate hero that's not just saving yourself. You're not just brave for you. You're brave so that you can be of assistance, of awareness, so that you can be of assistance. And it's phenomenal how quickly people shift through this. William James, the father of modern psychology, he spoke a lot about that. Walk slower so that you feel less afraid.
Right.
That's a big one.
Well, thank you so much. We got to get wrapping up so I can go take care of my little ones.
Yep, me too. I can see mine, knocking on the door. We're ready to go. But that was really, really, really cool. And I'm really glad that so many people came to show up to hear, the crazy thoughts of skydivers. But beyond that, just to begin that process of taking a closer look at what fear is, what does it really do, and how free and powerful am I really to expand beyond it? Because that's limitless. We really can be free of the limiting aspects of fear if we choose to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're
It was
very
great
welcome.
to have a nice little chat with you about all this today.
Yeah, I feel like we've been friends for a long, long time. You're awesome.
Absolutely. Brian Germain, everyone.
Thank you all. Namaste.
Namaste.
In a silver car with a borrowed guitar, ready to travel so far.